Good day to you people wherever you are in the world. How you doing? My name is Tim Anthony Ford, originally known as Anthony Tim Ogunmuyiwa, ATO Productions. Now, let me tell you why I changed my name. You see, I was born in 1979, UCLH Hospital, to my mother, Caroline Ogunaike. Now, my father on my birth certificate was never ever written, and no one really questioned that. I never really questioned that, and I don't know why. Until one day, the father that I thought was my father called me, Mr. Sylvester Ogunmuyiwa, and said, "Son, there's something I need to discuss with you. Come and see me in my house in Peckham." So I went to Queens Road, Peckham, and I, sat down with my father and said, "Please tell me, what is the story?" And he basically said to me, "Son, you're not my biological son." And I'm not gonna lie, although I felt like I knew, I remember the days when I had a knife to my wrist at the age of 7 because I wanted to kill myself because my father used to beat me to the end of the world and back. He wanted to just punish me for something that I can't even think I can remember right now. But all I know is the punishment surpassed what I actually done. And I remember that day, wanted to commit suicide. I wanted to cut my wrist. And I wanted to just basically alleviate myself of the punishment that I was getting from my father, or who I thought was my father. But I questioned it. I said to myself, how is this father, how is this man my father if he treats me like this? But don't get me wrong, it wasn't all day, it wasn't every day that he treated me like this. But what I'm trying to basically say was, when my father asked me to come to his house and told me that he was actually not my biological father, I felt like I already knew. I always questioned my mother and find out, to find out exactly what the situation was. She never, ever, ever said to me, "Son, this is what the situation is." She was too scared, I guess. Being a Nigerian woman, she probably felt the shame of what she done would arise, and she didn't want that. So anyway, my father says to me, "You see your brother in the next room. What happened was your brother was not meant to be born. I didn't want him. I wanted him aborted." I said, "Dad, why are you telling me these things? He's just in the next room." Now, myself and my brother never really got along. He was literally a year older than myself. Yeah, in fact, he was, a year older than myself. Born in 78, I'm born in 79. We never got on. We always fought. Never even knew why he hated me like this. All I know is just growing up was just tough with myself and him. It was just a constant struggle. I never understood such hate. But he basically said to me, this is my father, said to me, what I wanted to abort this son here. But because of the fact that his mother would have basically died, and he would have died, that, his mother decided not to abort this child, my brother. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad she didn't abort my brother, because he's given me a drive to do what I'm doing right now, because the hate that this young man has for me is just unbelievable. I don't get it. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Yeah. But anyway, when my father sat me down and told me that, my brother, he wanted to abort my brother. He gave my stepmother some money to abort her child and whatnot. I was a bit disgusted, I'm not gonna lie. Because I was thinking, hold on. You made the mistake of sleeping with this woman. Yeah. And now you want her to abort the child. Myself and my father discussed this. We went back and forth about this. As I said, I was a bit disgusted, but you know, it's my father. I love him. So he proceeded to tell me that I feel I don't actually know why he started with that story, but I feel like the reason he started that story was to perhaps point or denote that the reason that I was born was because of my stepbrother. I was conceived 6 months after my stepbrother was born. This story I knew later on. But my father basically said to me, "You're not my son." And I quickly said, "You know what? I know this. I know this. I know that you're not my father." I had an inkling about it. I remember holding my nephew, who is now almost 30 years old, in my hand and saying, "Why do you look so much like my father and I don't?" And it was at that moment I more or less knew that he wasn't my father. So I said to my father that day, "Why don't we do a DNA test?" But come on, like, what other option what was there really? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like parents are so smart that they lead you into saying what they want you to say. They make you feel like it was your idea. Now, don't get me wrong. I loved my dad. I loved him dearly. He passed away in 2010. The 5th of May, 2010. Sorry, the 5th of February, 2010. Yeah, it still hurts me to today. Because he wanted me to come and see him before I went to Nigeria. And he died that morning. I was freaking devastated. I cried and sobbed like a baby. Now, when we were talking about this, he was saying to me that, you know, he loved my mum. He loved my mum dearly. And I think to the day that he died, he still loved my mum dearly. And my mum was a stubborn brute. She was so stubborn in the sense of, she loved my dad. She loved my dad dearly. But because of her stubbornness, of her being so spoilt, she let my dad die of a broken heart. She let him die of a broken heart. Because look at how special this man is. He literally brought me up knowing that I wasn't his son. If that's not a man of integrity, I don't know what is. Okay, so he disciplined me. So he might have, you know, beat me a bit too much, more than I needed to. I might have taken a banana and beat me like I broke a window. Do you know what I mean? But you know what? When I did ask him, "Did you take it out of me?" He said, "Yes, I did." And you know what I did? I forgave him straight away because I understood, you know, having to keep all of that in. Man, it's crazy. So, long story short, I spoke to my mum and I said, "Mum, listen, I know this situation. We've just done this DNA test and it says clearly this person here that you say that is your father is not actually your father." We did the DNA test. It's in black and white. Nigerian parents. My mum was like, no. He's your father now. He's your father. Don't worry what that paper says. He's your father. But this is the woman that used to say to me, "Listen, that guy, sometimes he doesn't do that much for you. He doesn't do anything for you. Blah, 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 blah." Listen, he put me through school, man. He put me through primary school. Yeah? Put me through the best schools. Mary Magdalene, Our Lady of Apostles, them schools there in Nigeria. I lived under his house, under his roof. Yeah? So you can't tell me this man didn't do anything for me. Yeah? So what I'm trying to say out here is you cannot always blame the man for stuff. Women, you guys, you ladies, need to stand up and put your hand up when you've done wrong. Yeah? It's not just a one-way street. So anyway, speaking to my mother, after I said to her, listen, Mum, I know this is science. You can't, lie to science. Her being an old Nigerian woman was like, okay, especially watching Nollywood. She said, promise me 2 things. Do not kill me and do not abandon me. Again, I was disgusted. I was shocked that she could even think that I would even do anything like that. Right now, my mom has a stroke. My dad had a stroke before he passed away. And I'm taking care of my mom. One of the main carers for my mom at the moment. And it saddens me. I don't know why I'm bearing my soul, but I just feel like it's relevant. It's relevant for my progression. So you can understand when I bring out books or bring out films and whatnot, you understand where my story is going. Now, I asked my mum who my father was. Initially, she thought he was a Jamaican. Because back then, everyone that was not of African descent was considered a Jamaican in the 60s. 60s, 70s, Windrush era, basically, everyone was basically, if you weren't African, you were considered Jamaican. Especially by Nigerians. That's how narrow-minded that their thinking was, their ignorance. But anyway, she went to Euston Station because she had no more contact with my real father. And she spoke to some of her colleagues and his colleagues, and basically found out that Mr. Tony Ford, had moved back to Barbados where he was born. Now, if you remember at the beginning of this video, I said my name is Tim Anthony Ford, and it was Anthony Tim Ogunmuyiwa. Tim is Oluwarotimi, God stay with me, the name that my mum chose for me. When I was younger, my mum, in a way, as I said to you before, parents like to do this thing where they make you think an idea was yours. And there was a time when she gave me a ring. And she said, this is your brother's ring, Alex. This is Alex's ring. It's got an A on it. Now, I want you to have this ring. You got your confirmation coming soon, which is, I believe it's a Catholic religion or Catholic, Catholic thing that you do where you confirm that you're Christian and you choose your Christian name. My mother always told me, Tony Curtis is my favorite actor. Tony Curtis is my favorite actor. She always put all these ideas in my head about these names, and she said, oh, this ring, I'll give you this ring if you want to choose a name that had an A in it. Not later understanding or not later knowing that my real father's name, my biological father's name was Calvin Anthony Ford. Tony Ford, he was known at work. So in 2008, I went to Barbados, one of my friend's weddings. I was filming. And basically I found out that my father was a pastor. My biological father was a pastor. And I phoned every single Tony Ford in a phone book. At this time, I didn't know his name was Calvin Anthony Ford. I phoned every single Tony Ford in a white pages in Barbados. Hello, sir. My name is Anthony Ogunmuyiwa. My mother's name is Caroline Ogunaike, and I'm trying to find my father. He used to work at the London Underground. He came back to Barbados 3 years ago. Are you the Tony Ford, sir? Toot, 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 toot. Several calls ended like that. I couldn't find him. Now, I didn't know that my biological father's name was actually his house, or his place of residence was not in a phone book, because the house, I believe, belonged to my stepmother. What a wonderful woman she turned out to be. She's amazing. She's amazing right now. She's an amazing woman. Mummy V, I call her. So I basically couldn't find my father at this time. And I one day went to go and speak to my neighbor, my mum's neighbor at the time. And I said, Joy, I think she said to me, Tim, my father gets on my nerves. And I said, at least you know who your father is. She said, what? I thought the man that lived upstairs was your father. Oh yeah, he's just dropped a big bomb on me, man. He just said to me that, he's not my biological father. So what's your father's name, she says. Tony Ford, I said. He's from Barbados. Really? Give me a few days. I've got someone that knows a lot of Bajans and used to work in London Underground. Lo and behold, a lady that always came to her place to get her hair done was a friend of my father's. She found my dad. 16 years I lived above this woman, and she found my father. Just through talking. It's important to talk. So anyway, during the time where I believe my grandmother was ill, my father was going back and forth from Barbados. And my grandmother died basically during that process. I didn't get to meet her. It took 2 years before I actually got to meet my dad. He sent me a message. Said, Merry Christmas and happy birthday, because I know your birthday's coming up. I was devastated that my grandmother died and I didn't get to meet her. Now, it's a situation right now where I went to go meet my dad. At this time here, I'm doing my master's in cinematography. 2 years later, from me, knowing that my dad was actually around and he was looking for me for the last 25 years, I made a phone call. Or I received a phone call rather from my neighbor. He said, this is your father's number. He's expecting your call. I call him. He said, hello, sir, is this Mr. Tony Ford? He says, yes. Is that Timmy? He said, Timmy, let me just make sure this is the right Timmy. He says, you were born on the 29th of January, 1979. Your mother lived in Caledonia Road. And you weighed 6 to 7 pounds. I think he said 6 pounds. Or was that your christening? Your mother had drinks so high up that you almost touched the ceiling. He described the house that I lived in, that I grew up in Caledonia Road. Wow. He even met my mom in 1989 when I came back to London, when I spent about 8 years in Nigeria. He met up with my mum, and my mum never even told me that he was, that my father wasn't my real father and that this guy was my father. I didn't meet him. But it's the fact that she did not introduce me to him. I could have met him before he became ill. Now, it's important that I get you guys to understand, ladies and gents, understand one thing. You might do something for the moment and think it's right, but it doesn't mean that you should keep doing that thing. If you know what I'm trying to basically say is, if you know you've done a wrong that was a right at the time, you need to fix that. Fix it, because you don't know how many people you're hurting. Time is not promised to anybody. You could pass away at any time. You could die at any time. Do not leave what you could do today to tomorrow. As they say, that cliche, tomorrow is not promised. I can have loads of time with my father right now. My father's in the hospital right now. All those years of working in the underground, breathing in that air, has done damage to his lungs. That's another story. But people, you got to understand one more thing. When my stepfather passed away, the man I knew as father, as daddy all my life, when he passed away, my mother's name was written out of the obituary. Written out. Don't know who did it. But it was almost like, my mum was the only person that my dad legally married. Mr. Ogunmoyiwa legally married. But I was taken out of that obituary, or taken out of all of that. And I know I'm going to hurt some people here, and I don't mean to. I have to get this weight off my heart, and this is the medium that I'm using. It's the medium I'm using. Who else am I going to talk to? Who the heck else is going to listen? If you know how much that hurt, not belonging, not feeling like you belong, someone basically telling you that you don't belong. So yes, I changed my surname. One, because it helped me in the world in terms of work or whatnot, production. Even before that, before I even knew about my father, Greg used to be in Central Rental, now 24 Hire Kit, suggested that I change my surname on my CV so that I could be hired at least. And it was true, I got hired.